Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royse. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. AI is the biggest technology development of 2023, with advances in AI occurring almost every day. DeepPlanet has been using AI and deep learning tools in grapes growing to provide state-of-the-art precision viticulture. Let's welcome David Carter, who is the CEO of DeepPlanet, to share his innovations. Hello,
Hey,
David.
Hey, how's it going? How are you?
Good. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Thanks for having me on.
Please tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Dave Carter, CEO of DeepPlanet. We're building the world's ultimate climate platform, starting with the wine industry. I'm based here out of California, but we have a bit over 80 customers, some of the world's largest companies in the wine industry all around the world. And we're really at the cutting edge of helping them how to better manage this industry. We're using space data, leading AI, and our team heritage of researchers that originally came out of Oxford University to really help them adapt to the changes in climate that are actually happening out there today.
Is your technology from Oxford, UK, or that was innovated in US?
So we actually, the three of us who started the company, we actually did some graduate studies in Oxford. I'm Australian originally, but I live here in the US. Natalia and Sushma, my business partners, they were based out of the UK. But we have people all over the world now. So we have people in France, here in the US, Australia, and in the UK. So.
Why you do what you do, and how did you initiate the idea to use deep learning tool in the vineyards?
Yeah, so we got together in our graduate studies while we were in Oxford, and we actually entered a challenge separately to address global water challenges that are across the world, either too much water, too little water, droughts, floods. And we came at it from different angles. Myself, I've got a background in the oil and gas heavy industry software, and basically looked at modeling subsurface water and like they do in the oil and gas industry in different ways. Natalia came from a computer vision, so she was looking at gaming or looking at people's emotions or facial recognition, and wanting to apply that technology to satellites to actually understand what was happening with shortages of global water. And Sushma has a background. She actually invented the world's. She was part of the team that invented the world's first 4G mobile call, and taking that research and taking it to market. And she had a similar idea. And we're actually sitting in a pub in Oxford, and towards the end of our studies, and realized we were at the same mission. We won that competition, and we decided to create a business out of it. The reason we got into viticulture is that when we reached out to different people within agriculture who were being affected by weather, due to the permeable nature of grapes, vineyards kept coming back to us, and winemakers kept coming back to us and saying there's wild swings in temperatures. That means that our harvests are being pushed forward or being brought back months. There's diseases attacking grapes that were never attacking them in regions. It's very, very difficult and making it impossible to manage for people out there today. Instead of being one strange year in weather every 5 years, now there's 4. So the models and the way that people are doing farming have really had to change. You see the wildfires, you see the hail events, the frost events, the weather swings, too much water, too little water, that's really making it very, very difficult and impossible for our customers to manage today. I'm from one of the main wine regions in Australia, and that's actually where we got our first customer, and now here we are all across the world. So we got into vineyards.
Talk about weather. Does your technology have impact on climate change?
It actually helps people adapt to climate change. So to understand what's going to happen. So for instance, looking at when grapes will be ready to be harvested, what's the sugar content of them. So from a harvesting perspective, coordination and understanding where they're at, and basically more helping people adapt versus actually remediate the changes in climate.
And I understand you use this satellite to collect your data. What can you determine from satellite image data?
Yeah, well, we're actually helping. It's probably the best way to look at it is we're helping 3 people in the industry. So, and that we're using, and so we use satellite data, weather data, ground data, sometimes photos on a camera as well. But we're mainly using satellite data and a lot of the time non-visual spectral bands, so infrared or X-ray or radar or all of these different kind of sensors that are available on satellites, combining that with weather data, and to really detect, or we call our product vine signal, to detect the signal of what's happening on the ground. So that can be anything from a disease to the sugar content of the grapes, nutrients in the soil, nutrients in the plant, carbon in the soil, to kind of wide scale monitoring, even detecting where a vineyard is. So that when using all that technology, we're really helping 3 people, one being the winemaker and logistics teams. So that's really that's on the sugar content side, to understand what yields are going to be. So what we do crop estimates. We understand what the sugar content is. Currently, that's a very manual process to go out there and determine, and lots of error can happen in that. We can determine the sugar content of the grapes as it goes from when the grapes change color at Braison all the way through the season, and give them an idea of when the grapes will be ready to harvest. It's a huge logistics effort that happens, that's out there. Secondly, we're helping the growers grow more sustainably. So that's using less water, the right amount of nutrients, the right amount of fertilizer, the right amount of compost to really improve their soils, retain water, retain nutrients, so that they can use less of it. And then we help them with disease. So both at a grower level, understand that there's 12 major pests and diseases that affect grapes. Everything from the catastrophic phylloxera, which wiped out the European wine industry back in over 100 years ago, through to kind of more regular ones that are affecting different parts of the world. So from red blotch to downy pouty mildew, botrytis, and more rots that happen. So we can actually pick up those diseases that are happening using those spectral bands, using those weather data, and give early warning of those diseases, and also help track the spread of them so people can be wary and take remediative action against them. So and so the third people that we help, and kind of applying that, is the regional association. So we help people map where all the vineyards are, and then respond to kind of major events that happen. So everything from trying to grow more sustainably to a hail event or a flood event, understanding which vineyards are risk of disease, which are damaged, and they can quickly respond to those things.
How accurate those informations are?
Yeah, so we actually launched 6 years ago, and spent a lot of time in the R&D perspective. So for each one of the things that we do, we want to get a minimum of 90% accuracy or more before we release it to the public. So we've spent all this time testing out in the field, and then we get typically more than 90%, or some cases, up to 99.9% accurate in what we're doing. Just dependent, but really what we're trying to do is give a much better method of either measuring what's happening on the ground or giving early warning happening on the ground that you couldn't do with just the current methods that are out there. So they're meant to be complementary and additive to the current things that are happening out there. So give people earlier warning, respond to something quicker, or be able to monitor without having to send all those people out in the field to do it.
What is the most valuable information to growers? Would they take your information as a valuable tool for them to prevent early in time for their crops?
Yeah, so for growers, the biggest thing we're seeing is that there's as you saw over the last couple of years, especially in the US and Australia and Spain, very dry regions. Even we're seeing in South America now, there's not enough water or groundwater that's available, and so people are getting restricted on how much water they can put on. So we see water is probably the biggest issue from a grower perspective, as well as secondly, people are wanting to grow more sustainably, and there's more regulations that are coming in. So both optimizing and using less water and making the most of your allocations that you have, as well as using less fertilizers and less, reducing the cost of those. Those costs have skyrocketed with the things like the war in Ukraine, and the cost of diesel have gone crazy. So that people are trying to produce more sustainably that way as well. And then lastly, obviously diseases, because there's diseases that people are facing due to this changes in climate that they're not used to facing in the region they're currently in. So that's a big problem. So early warning of those diseases is the third thing that we're really seeing that growers get out of this.
How many types of grapes are there, and do you provide different services?
For sure. So there's tons. There's at least over 50 commercial varieties of grapes and hundreds of varieties across the world. They're in both red and white. So part of the challenge when we embarked upon this that we didn't know that we do now is we actually had to build models for each variety of grape to really get a sense. So to build that data set and to build that history, because not all grapes are grown in every part of the world, we've had to build up that library of different varieties and how they behave over time. In addition to that, you can have the same variety of grape that can be grown different ways. So people might be trying to grow super premium, so they're trying to strain the plant to have they'll have less yield, but they'll really they'll grow it a very different way than say someone who's producing, instead of producing maybe a $60 or $100 bottle, they might be producing a $5 bottle for the same variety of grape in a different region where they put lots and lots of water on it. They want to get high yields and make something that's just more easy drinking, if you like. So you have to factor in not only the variety but how they're being grown, and then the local weather that's actually in that region as well. So there's a lot of different variables that go into it.
Is a different type of grapes will have a different sugar content? Maybe they need a different soil or weather pattern, stuff like that.
So you probably heard of the concept of terroir. So yeah, some definitely different varieties behave differently. So as a simple example, whites typically mature quicker and might have a different target of sugar content that is required. They measure that in a thing called brix. So that's the sugar content in the grapes. They go out and squeeze the juice and determine, okay, how much sugar content is it, and therefore what conversion to alcohol will it have. So typically whites will mature to their level of sugar content, which is typically lower than the reds that are out there. So a Chardonnay versus a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Zinfandel, they'll typically have a lower sugar target than the reds. And so you'll typically see people pick a little bit earlier their whites, and typically the reds will come up to that maturity level or that sugar content level and pick that as well. So yes, the varieties is key, and the style of wine that they're making is key to determine what's the kind of optimal conditions to pick the grapes and then make wine out of them.
Are you servicing in many different continents right now, correct?
Yes. So we actually have customers all over the world. We've officially opened office. We had our first customers in Australia, about half of them now all in Australia. We've also opened up here in the US the last couple of years, and then over in Bordeaux in France. So we have that's where the majority of our customers are across those three countries. But we have some people in South America, in Chile or Argentina. We have people in Italy, people in Armenia. They're even growing wine now in the UK due to climate change. The temperature is starting to rise so much that it's actually, they can make pretty good sparkling wine analogous to what champagne was, say, 20, 30 years ago. So we have customers all around the world. It's pretty exciting, and we're really helping people right across the world in totally different climates and totally different conditions, but with the similar challenges.
How excited. Can your company help growers reduce food waste?
Definitely. So probably about 20% of production is probably I'd say waste, I'd say loss. So probably about 20% of in general of grapes are lost every year through everything from disease to or to not optimal quality, because they're expecting it to be a certain quality, but when they actually harvest it, it comes in and that they've been sampling the wrong part of the vineyard and it's actually a higher or lower sugar content and therefore has to be made into a different wine, or might have disease, so have to throw it away. That's great. So we kind of what we're really helping with is that waste early in the process. And helping them adapt to kind of climate effects that's causing that waste. So that's how we're really helping people out in that process. Once it's produced, if people aren't drinking the wine, we can't help you with that. If they're not finishing the bottle.
Are you only service grape growers? Do you have a plan to expand to other crops?
Yeah, so we started off with wine grapes. We do have customers in other crops as well, but we're primarily focused right now in that. We do have some wine growers that have other crops. So everything from, and we've done quite extensive studies and starting to release our product for other things. So for instance, with potatoes, we've done quite extensive on that. Grassland or rangeland monitoring to help cattle do rotational grazing, similar technology. We even have a customer in aquaculture, so prawn farming, if you like, or shrimp farming as well. But most of what we do today, over 95%, is in viticulture.
How do you do potatoes? They are underground, am I correct?
Correct, but the actual they're interested in the same sort of things, everything from soil moisture to variability in their and then obviously while the potatoes are overground, the actual plant is above ground, so you can tell things like that. They're also interested very much in what nutrients to put into the soil, so what fertilizer, so NPK, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, and other elements. So there's elements of our product that we develop for vineyards which are quite complicated, and we can take those elements and apply it to other crops.
For example, like potato underground. So you tell by the above ground plant what kind of nutrients they needed?
So we see both the nutrients in the plant, and then we also measure the nutrients in the soil as well, okay. And the water content, so the soil moisture that's in the soil as well.
Okay. Do you have a plan to develop your technology and increasing your service offering?
Yeah, definitely. So right now we're focused on launching in the regions of the world, the major wine regions of the world. So now that we're here in the US, there's the last couple of years, also in South America, open an office there, Italy, Spain, and that'll cover about 80% of the world's vineyards that we could have access to. And then we're also looking at expanding to adjacent crops. We are starting to get quite a few potato farmers, and those that are on soil moisture, and also those that are looking at grasslands. So we have some customers in Australia for the grasslands, and customers in Africa to kind of monitor the rotational grazing of their
livestock.
Of the farms. Yeah, the livestock, exactly.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
So, but the height of the grass is important there. So they want to make sure it's not overgrazed. There's an optimal amount of that you want. So you want a livestock in the field, and so they eat the right amount of grass, then go to the next one, and the more they eat in the optimal amount, the grass will actually grow faster, and the more cattle you can actually have on the property. So there's an optimal amount that you have there. So that's a big interest to a lot of people that people are starting to see, and we do have some people already using that tech today.
Is it grassing for food sources for the livestock, where you are preventing the wildfire?
No, it's for. So at the moment, what they're using it for, is for the livestock, not for wildfire measurement or anything like that. It's possible to use that in the future, but we don't offer that today.
Okay. All right. And that's usually a majority in Australia.
About half our customers are in Australia right now, but if you asked me that a year ago, I would have said 90%. So it's gradually expanding across the world. We spent about 6 years in research and then about 2 years launched commercially.
Wonderful.
So another thing that we actually help people with is helping them improve their soils, and probably the best measure of the most easiest measure of doing that is measuring the soil organic matter or soil organic carbon. So we've actually been able to, across multiple places in the world, determine the soil health by measuring using satellite imagery. We ground truth that with historical soil tests to actually show variability in soil organic matter or soil organic carbon, or the carbon in the soil, and track that change over time. So we can see that over a 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 year period. If you're able to improve the soil organic matter within your soil, then you'll retain water and retain nutrients better and actually get much better farming outcomes, because you'll be able to use less fertilizer and actually use less water, because it'll be retained in the soil and available for the plant to use. So that's a huge impact for farmers if they're able to do that and measure that. They're also able to get carbon credits to actually help fund those type of improvements that they've done to the soil, but it's actually trapping more carbon in the soil. So that's another great thing that we're able to do. We're also starting to help people do biodiversity studies. So different spectral bands can actually measure different species. So having diverse species across a piece of farmland will obviously bring in bring in more wildlife, but also get biodiversity across, which is a good thing to have. So we're actually helping people measure that and do studies to get accredited or get credits for actually doing being more biodiverse and basically having a better ecosystem across their vineyard or across their land and farm. And then the really new thing that we've done this for a while, but we're getting asked this quite a lot now, probably I'd say 5 times in the last month, is actually to understand what based on different climate scenarios for the next 20, 30 years, basically give people the environmental conditions that are likely to be for their vineyard or for their region. So maybe a regional association to say, look, it's going to be X degrees hotter, therefore harvest will be pulled forward. There's likely to be X amount of rainfall, maybe less rainfall, maybe more hail events or risk of frost events, how this would actually impact the region. And people are asking that from either a winery perspective to understand what new varieties, like you mentioned, to plant, or alternatively, what sort of measures they're going to have to take as the actual average temperature rises. So everything from there might be more at risk of a frost event, might be more at risk of hail events, so they might need to build infrastructure for that. They might need to think more about their water sources, and then also really look at what varieties to plant, because different varieties thrive in between different temperature bands. So there's places in France right now, they're actually looking at replanting for 20 years time as they expect temperatures to rise, and either different types of the same variety that are more resilient to drought or more resilient to the change in temperatures, or actually using a different variety than I might typically have done in that region. So these are the type of interesting climate studies that we're actually helping people with, kind of modeling what's going to happen in 20 years time and how that might affect them.
Sounds like weather pattern has changed. Is pretty much everywhere.
Definitely so. They were actually still harvesting grapes in May in Australia, which is very, very late. Typically, they would be finished by April, but they had a lot of things were still being harvested in May and probably could have been harvested through to June, which is crazy. Which is like saying they'd be harvesting grapes at Christmas time, which for us, which is or New Year's, which would be kind of unheard of. So these changes in weather patterns are really pushing harvest back, forward and back, and people are being affected with this the change in temperatures all around the world.
Wow. And how can people contact you for your services?
Oh, sure. Well, probably the easiest way, jump to our website. So www.deepplanet, all one word, .ai. So DEEPPLANET.ai. And reach out. We have myself here and a couple others here in the US, in Australia, or if you're in Europe, reach out. But yeah, just reach out, and I'd love to help and chat with you and see how we can help you.
Great. Thank you very much, David, for your time today. That was very informative information you provided to our listeners.
Okay, no worries. Great to see you again. Cheers.
Cheers.